The appearance on the road to Emmaus. I wonder how they couldn't recognize the face of Jesus after all the time they spent talking to him throughout the journey, and only was able to see and recognize it was him at the breaking of the bread at night. I mean, before Jesus died, they spent a lot of time with him, right? And they must know the face of Jesus. They must know how he looked like. But how come do they not see this person is Jesus? It's kind of like mind-blowing to me. This is also my journey, this part where I don't really know everything and I don't really see everything and I don't really see the truth all the time. Many times in my life, I came face to face with Jesus, but I cannot see him. I cannot recognize it's him. For me, in my season right now, I find it's hard to recognize God as my father. A year ago, my father passed away, and after that, God has been intensifying the invitation of him being my father. For some reason, I didn't know. All I have to do is to be a child of God. It took me a year to realize that all I have to do is to become a child of God, to be his child, be a royal child. So that's the invitation for me from the gospel, to become God's royal child. Again, to be loved by him, and he is my father, he is my papa. So this is how I would respond to him today, to be a child.
The gospel this Sunday is taken from the Gospel of Luke, and it speaks about the two disciples of Jesus who were walking towards Emmaus. Scripture says their faces were downcast and they were defeated. They felt hopeless because they were hoping that Jesus will be the one who will set the Israelites free. Now, in their hopelessness, in their disappointments, they decided to turn to Emmaus. Now, Jerusalem, according to Luke, is a place where hopes were found, where lives were transformed, where lots of miracles were performed. But it is also a place where Jesus experienced suffering, where he was betrayed, where he was humiliated. Father Ron Rolheiser, another favorite priest of mine, in his writings mentioned that scholars describe Emmaus as a place of entertainment. You can call it as like Las Vegas of today. So the two disciples, they were doing what we all do when we get hurt. We walk away from our hurts and journey towards things that we think are able to take away our pain, or things that perhaps can distract us from our pain and suffering. Now, the good news is, in the hopelessness of the two disciples, Jesus came to meet them and walk with them in their despair. Even though they were unable to recognize him, they were unable to see that the story does not end with Jesus' death and sufferings. They were unable to see that out of the suffering and pain, beautiful things can be born if they allow God to move in them. Now, I too was unable to recognize Jesus in my hopelessness and despair in this MCO period. For a while, I allowed myself to be distracted with many things instead of trying to recognize how God is moving. When the restriction order was announced 38 days ago, I was devastated. I was in despair. Fear and worry became my good friends. I was worried on how would I be able to provide for my family. For the first 2 weeks, I turned to things that I felt were able to give me some sort of life and happiness. I immersed myself on my computer. I slept quite late and woke up quite late. And I spent most of my time on my smartphone trying to run away from my pain. However, just like the two disciples who finally were able to recognize Jesus from the breaking of bread, Jesus, through the help of my community, helped me to see that God is meeting me where I am, connecting with people, breaking the word, spending time in personal and communal prayer, helped me to recognize Jesus has always been walking with me. And actually, just like the disciples, I never really arrived at Emmaus. I began to see the beauty of resurrection and realized that there is no other way to new life except through death, no other way to glorious light of Easter Sunday except through the terrible darkness of Good Friday. Eventually, the two disciples turned back to Jerusalem with new perspective and new found hope. How about you? Where are you in this season of your life?